It's 0517 hours in the southern Caribbean, the kind of early morning when the sea looks like black glass and the sky hasn't yet decided if it wants to be blue. Aboard the USS Gravely, everything is routine, quiet, predictable, almost peaceful. Then the ship's forward 5-inch gun shudders to life. The steel beneath the crew's boots vibrates. Conversation dies mid-sentence. Heads snap toward the sound because guns don't move on their own. Not at this hour. Not without a reason. Inside the ship's internal net, a single command cuts through the silence. Condition 3. Set and man all key stations. No one asks why. On a Navy destroyer, a call like that is never casual. It means something, and someone is coming. Within seconds, CIC, the Combat Information Center, lights up with activity. 3 new radar contacts have appeared on the southwest edge of the ship's tactical picture. They're small, fast, and closing in with a speed that's increasing by the second. The computer tags them automatically: Sierra 1, Sierra 2, Sierra 3. Country of origin, Venezuela. The captain steps onto the bridge. He doesn't yell. He doesn't need to. Orders ripple out with calm precision. Unlock the magazines. Remove weapon safeties. Helmets on. All stations warm and ready. Tension settles over the destroyer like a heavy coat. In CIC, operators track the contacts as they advance at nearly 28 knots, drawing a straight, purposeful line toward the Gravely. The destroyer's massive 5-inch gun rotates just a few degrees, barely enough to count as movement, but more than enough to deliver a clear message to anyone watching. We see you. A watchstander leans closer to one of the screens. Low-profile hulls, likely fast patrol boats, he says. Nothing heavy on radar. They're running light, speed and intent only. And that's what makes it more concerning. These are the kinds of boats you use when you want to get close, very close, without crossing the threshold of open aggression. Behind the bridge windows, the horizon is still nothing but darkness. But the Americans can feel what's coming long before they can see it. The Gravely's electronic warfare suite hums to life. Sensors fan out across the electromagnetic spectrum, listening, sniffing, recording every signal the Venezuelan vessels emit. And still the boats keep coming. The sailors up on deck scan the water, trying to catch the first sliver of movement. They've seen fast approach drills hundreds of times in training, but training never includes this. Real foreign vessels. Real political tension. Real risk of escalation. This time the order isn't stand by. It's show presence. A phrase that means, be seen, be ready, but don't make the first mistake. Inside CIC, the operations officer leans over the tracking display. Contacts inside 12 nautical miles and closing. Recommend we classify hostile intent pending identification. Copy, the captain responds. Bridge, maintain course. Weapons, stand ready but hold fire. Hold fire. 2 words that carry more weight than most people will ever understand. In the main deck passageways, sailors sprint to their stations. The gun crew checks the feed trays. The CIWS teams power up the radar-driven Gatling gun. The phalanx turret begins its distinctive electric whine, a sound that always means things are getting serious. Every ship in the fleet trains for moments like this. But this is no drill. Up on the bridge, binoculars sweep back and forth across the horizon. Still nothing visible, but the bearing is unmistakable. The Venezuelan vessels are heading straight for the Gravely's starboard beam. The captain taps the comm panel. Engineering, maintain full power on the turbines. We may need to maneuver. And that's when the narrator reminds us. The USS Gravely isn't here by accident. For 2 months, U.S. destroyers and Coast Guard cutters have been running Operation Sentinel South, a major counter-smuggling and maritime security mission near Venezuelan waters. Officially, it's about stopping drug and weapons trafficking. Unofficially, it's a geopolitical warning. Washington is watching. Just 4 days earlier, U.S. Navy helicopters intercepted 2 fast boats suspected of running narcotics and arms toward Curaçao. One of the boats ignored warnings and was sunk. Caracas called it aggression. The Pentagon called it law enforcement at sea. Now, Venezuela's Navy appears determined to make its displeasure known. The USS Gravely is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, 155 meters of steel, sensors, missiles, and American naval doctrine. Her ESPA-1D radar can track over 100 targets at once. Her Aegis combat system links her seamlessly to aircraft overhead. The Venezuelan patrol craft? Likely Gavir class, fast, small, lightly armed, perfect for harassment runs. They're not built to win a fight. They're built to create one. Within U.S. Southern Command, these sorts of encounters have a name: controlled friction. Encounters meant to stay political, unless someone makes the wrong call. Inside the ship, the temperature seems to drop. Not physically, psychologically. Because every sailor on board knows that once you're inside 10 nautical miles, things happen faster than people have time to think about them. The Gravely systems are already alive. Mark 45 gun, humming in standby. Phalanx CIWS, spinning up. Aegis, building a unified picture of the battle space. SLQ-32V3, listening for radar locks. So far, Venezuela hasn't lit up any fire control radar. That's good. But it doesn't mean they won't. Then comes the sound every sailor recognizes instantly, the thunderous whine of a helicopter spool up. The MH-60R Seahawk, callsign Razor 21, is rolling out onto the flight deck. Its mission: eyes on target, weapons cold. The deck crew removes tie-down chains, folds out the rotors, and that familiar smell of jet fuel spreads over the aft deck. At 0519, the Seahawk lifts off, banking hard to the south. Its FLIR pod immediately begins scanning for heat signatures. Seconds later, the sensor operator calls it in. 3 vessels confirmed. Running in V formation. Speed steady at 28 knots. From altitude, the crew can see everything. Venezuelan flags snapping in the wind. A slender sensor mast behind the bridge. Crew members on deck watching the destroyer. Engines pushing near their limits. No deck-mounted guns are visible, but on vessels like these, weapons can appear in seconds. Razor 21 to Gravely. Visual confirmed. Tracking steady. Down below, the Spy 1D radar tracks the boats with surgical precision. But the Americans make sure not to cross the line. They do not lock fire control radar. They do not activate missile guidance. They do not raise their own threat posture beyond visibility. Because on this kind of standoff, intent is everything. The Seahawk circles wide, not threatening but undeniably present. A silent reminder that U.S. Navy eyes are everywhere. By 0522, the range has closed to 5 nautical miles. That's close enough for the Venezuelan crews to read the Gravely's hull number painted in white. And close enough for every American sailor to feel adrenaline tightening in their chest. The bridge makes the first move. Venezuelan naval vessels, the radio operator broadcasts. This is a United States warship operating in international waters. You are closing distance at high speed. Alter course immediately. The transmission goes out in English, then Spanish. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then CIC calls out, lead vessel still accelerating. Range 4.8 miles. That's when the captain gives a new order: set visible posture. No targeting radars. Up on deck, the Phalanx rotates just enough for its barrels to be seen in the early dawn light. The 5-inch gun shifts, barely, but perfectly visible to the Venezuelan helmsman. Not a threat. A reminder. And finally, the radio crackles to life. A tense voice, thick accent. This is Venezuelan Navy patrol craft. You are operating close to our territorial waters. Identify your mission. The answer comes instantly. This is USS Gravely. We are operating legally in international waters. Maintain safe separation. The Venezuelan boats slow to 20 knots but continue shadowing the destroyer at 3.6 nautical miles. An intentional, controlled provocation. Every sailor aboard the Gravely understands the unspoken truth. It's easier to start a war than explain one. The rules of engagement are clear. No firing unless hostile act. No firing unless hostile intent is unmistakable. Speed alone isn't enough. A radar lock might not even be enough. A wrong interpretation could ignite an international crisis. And this destroyer is sitting just 14 nautical miles from Venezuela's coastline. International waters, yes, but close enough for accusations, politics, and chest-thumping on both sides. Venezuela claims an extended Bolivarian security zone. The U.S. does not recognize it. Both sides think they're right. Both are acting like it. And that's what makes this dangerous. The 3 Venezuelan vessels kept circling, their wakes leaving churned white scars across the dark blue water. They wanted a spectacle, something dramatic enough to broadcast on state TV. But against a professional U.S. Navy destroyer crew, theater doesn't go far. A junior weapons officer called out from the console, "Target lock from Vessel 2, infrared signature spike." Not a missile, probably fire control radar. That was the moment everything changed. A U.S. warship can tolerate insults. It can tolerate aggressive maneuvering. But painting an American ship with fire control radar crosses a line carved in stone. Commander Aldridge stood still for a moment, the CIC silent around him. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm enough to feel cold. "Bridge CIC. Inform them they are engaging in hostile targeting. Final warning." The bridge relayed the message in English and Spanish. No response. Instead, one Venezuelan boat accelerated sharply and crossed Gravely's bow at less than 150 yards, suicidally close for a high-speed pass. The whole ship shuddered as the destroyer cut through the rough wake. Chief Jacobs muttered, "They're trying to get us to hit them on camera." Commander Aldridge didn't dignify that with a reply. He simply said, "Spin up SeaRAM. Set phalanx to auto-track, hold fire." Those two orders combined meant one thing. If they did anything stupid enough, the ship would defend itself, instantly and automatically. On the Venezuelan flagship, an officer finally radioed back. The voice was slurred with adrenaline, or ego. "This is Bolivarian Navy patrol vessel. You are in Venezuelan sovereign waters. You will stop engines immediately for inspection." The CIC crew stared at the speaker as if it had just told a joke. Everyone in that room knew where they were. The GPS coordinates were unmistakable. They were 22 nautical miles off the Venezuelan coast, international waters. Aldridge leaned toward the comm panel and replied with absolute clarity, "Negative. We will not stop engines. We are operating lawfully in international waters. You will maintain safe distance." The Venezuelan officer snapped back, "You do not tell us what is safe. You are provoking us." Then came the line that sealed what happened next. "You will comply or we will take action." The CIC went dead quiet. Before the destroyer could respond, one of the Venezuelan vessels armed a deck-mounted rocket-propelled flare launcher, not a weapon designed for combat, but dangerously close to looking like one through a radar signature. Within 2 seconds, the ship's electronic warfare officer confirmed. "Unknown launch system primed. Classification ambiguous. Could be anti-ship, could be signaling." Anything ambiguous pointed at a U.S. warship falls into a simple category: threat. The SeaRAM launcher rotated toward the vessel with chilling smoothness, its infrared seeker glowing. On the bridge, sailors spotted Venezuelan crew members suddenly scrambling below deck, panicked the moment the U.S. defensive system moved. One Venezuelan sailor tripped and nearly fell into the water. They knew exactly what SeaRAM could do. Commander Aldridge issued the final warning, short, firm, absolute. "Venezuelan vessels, you are locking weapons on a U.S. Navy ship. Cease targeting immediately or you will be treated as a hostile threat." Again no reply. Instead, the Venezuelan flagship edged closer, yards closer, its engine screaming. At this distance, one wrong move, one spark, one misread gesture, and the situation would explode. But then, something happened that none of the sailors expected. From outside the destroyer's starboard windows, a deep mechanical roar filled the air, low at first, then swelling into a thunder that vibrated the railings. A U.S. Navy F/A-18 Super Hornet dropped out of the clouds like a steel hammer. It streaked across the Venezuelan formation at barely 200 feet altitude, the shockwave punching the water into mist. Every Venezuelan crewman froze. On radar, 2 more Super Hornets appeared, forming a tight combat spread above the destroyer. The message was unmistakable. This little stunt was over. The Venezuelan ships drifted apart. No more aggressive turns. No more posturing. Their bravado evaporated in seconds. The destroyer CIC watched as the vessel slowly turned south and limped back toward the coast. No apology. No explanation. Just silence and retreat. Chief Jacobs exhaled and shook his head. They wanted a headline until they saw what a real military looks like. Another sailor added quietly, "They're lucky no one hit the wrong switch." But the incident didn't end on the water. Hours later, Venezuelan state TV aired a heavily edited story claiming the U.S. ship had fled after being warned by the brave Bolivarian fleet. Anyone who had been on USS Gravely that morning simply laughed. The Navy didn't bother issuing a rebuttal. They didn't need to. The truth lived in radar logs, satellite recordings, thermal imagery, encrypted comms, and the testimony of 320 sailors. The Gravely stayed on station for another 12 hours, calm, steady, untouched. Because the job wasn't bravado. It wasn't politics. It was professionalism. And professionalism is something you can't fake on television. Later that night, after the ship settled into normal operations again, a young sailor asked Commander Aldridge, "Sir, why didn't we fire when they locked onto us?" Aldridge paused before answering, choosing his words carefully. "If someone pushes you on the street," he began, "you don't hit them unless they swing at you. And even then, you hit only as hard as necessary to end the fight." He looked out through the armored glass toward the dark horizon. War is what happens when adults stop acting like adults. Today we acted like adults. They didn't. The sailor nodded slowly. In truth, the destroyer could have ended all 3 Venezuelan vessels in less than 40 seconds. The F divided by a -18s overhead? Even faster. But victory isn't always measured in explosions. Sometimes the greatest show of strength is choosing not to use it. The official report filed later described the incident in calm, bureaucratic language, far more boring than the reality. 3 Venezuelan naval craft conducted unsafe and unprofessional maneuvers near USS Gravely. No injuries or damage were reported. No mention of the brinkmanship. No mention of the near-trigger moments. No mention of how close the Caribbean came to witnessing a military disaster. Because that's how the U.S. Navy works. They don't escalate. They don't posture. They don't need to. When you carry enough power to reshape an entire coastline, restraint isn't weakness, it's discipline. By dawn the next day, everything was back to normal. The crew ate breakfast, rotated watches, ran drills, cracked jokes in the galley. But everyone on board knew they just lived through one of those rare moments. A moment when the thin line between peace and violence trembles, and the actions of a few professionals decide which side the world wakes up on. And somewhere deep inside the ship, in a logbook stored in the Combat Information Center, a single entry summed up the entire day. No shots fired. Sometimes history isn't written by explosions. Sometimes it's written by the silence that prevents them. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment below and let me know what story you want to see next. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode.